Hi, here's a quick tutorial on how to create an interface for Mach with Flash. I'm using Macromedia Fireworks, but you can use any kind of digital editing program that you want. The only difference will be that you'll have to go into Flash. After creating your objects, go to Flash, File, Import, and let's actually create a stage here. File, Import, to Library, or to stage, whichever you prefer, in all formats. Flash really supports any kind of format that you can think of. That's my Prescott processor in the background. That'll probably be going off frequently throughout our tutorial here. So what the first part is going to be is how to create an actual LEDs and buttons and some DROs here. Using Fireworks. It should be about the same in any of your other editing programs. So I'm going to maximize this, delete this picture of my son here, and I'm going to create a Fireworks file. So I'm going to start off with 800 by 600. That's a pretty reasonable width and height to start off with. You can up your resolution if you feel that you need some crisper images. I have this set to transparency, everything else is fine. Here's my stage, 800 by 600. On the left hand side we have our select tools if you want to manipulate shapes, bitmap tools if you want to cut, erase, stamp, vector tools for creating your images, and the color palettes to change your color images. We're going to first start off with my favorite here is the rounded rectangle because we're able to get some really interesting shapes. There's other things in here that you can use as well. So we're going to come in here and we're going to start off with our standard looking DRO. We'll have it about this size. Now once you create one of your DROs, it's pretty easy. You'll just copy, cut, and paste to make a number of them. So if we click on our properties down here at the bottom, we're going to change that color to black so I can get a better idea of what it looks like. I'm also in the bottom right hand corner going to zoom in about 100%. Now by clicking on these you can change shape pretty rapidly here. We're going to give it more of a rounded shape here. Now what I want to do is I want to cut out a section in the middle that's going to be transparent. What you want to do is come back over here, and if depending on the shape that you want for it in the middle, choose it. I'm going to go with the rounded rectangle again. I'm going to change the color so I can actually see it. So I'm going to start here, and I think that I want the numbers pretty visible with just a slight background here. And that looks about good. I might want to change this on the corners. Now, while it's still vector data, it's pretty easy to punch, cut pieces in and out. If they are bitmaps, you will have to turn them into vector data. Just ask me in an email and I can explain how to do that. Now once this is semi-centered here, I'm going to go up, select both of them by left clicking on one, shift and left clicking on the other. Now they're both selected. This is my layer palette showing me the different layers. I come up to modify and I want to combine paths. So I'm going to first, before I do that, Control C to copy this, and I'll explain why here in 1 second why I'm copying this. Modify, combine paths, and I'm going to punch a hole through that. Oops, and I want to make sure both of them are selected before I do that. And I'm going to punch a hole through that. Now you can get some pretty interesting shapes by doing that, by doing this cookie cutter idea. Now the reason I did a Control C on that object is because I want my glass inside of there to fit exactly. So now I'm basically going to do a Control V, which will paste it exactly back on there. Now I'm going to make this area transparent and also give it a glass effect. I'm not going to do a background in here, which you could easily do just by creating a box, or if you had copied this before you punched it, you can give it a different texture background. I'm not going to get into that. So I'm going to start off first with creating my border here. I'm going to go to filters, and I've got some cheats here. Alien Skins is very cheap and is tremendous at creating some really good effects. Now all these will transfer into Flash without having to, these are actually available in Flash as well as in Fireworks, so you can do a lot of this stuff as well in Flash without having to do it here. But you could always go online and find different objects and shapes and bring it in here. I'm going to do a brush metal, which is one of my favorites. My screen resolution usually is a lot higher than this, so you might be able to see a little bit of what I'm doing. Here is the object, so I can see what it is. I have different styles on my left hand side, which you really can't see here unless I do this. And here are some of my, I also have a dual screen, so my selections, many different selections, dark, highlighted, subtle highlighted. I'm going to go with a sharp highlighted just for this demonstration. I'm not demonstrating how to do graphic design, more of how to create these objects to export to Flash. And now I'm going to cheat and do also a glass effect. Now the glass effect is down here. These are my parameters. Usually you can see this much better. I'm going to do a standard clear, and now inside of here I can see that my glass is over the top of it. I'm not going to be able to see any text until I apply some kind of transparency in there for it. So simply, this is our transparency for each individual object that is being selected. They each can have their own type of transparency. I'm just going to add a little bit more here so I can see some of the shadowing effects and some of the glass effects here. Now for me to test this out to see how well everything's going to look, I'm going to add some text. Now this text is not going to be exported, but rather just a test to see my transparency before I export it. Let me put another 0 in here, probably 3, depending how big your machine is. And I'm going to drop this down, get an idea of how it's going to look. Because we're working in layers, I'm at the top layer here. I'm going to move it in between, sandwiching it in between the two. Now I can get a better idea that the glass is a little bit foggy, and just to lighten up on the transparency here. And still give me some glass effect. And you could just be playing around with that all day if you'd like. So also, I might want to change the bevel here. Anything at your discretion is pretty readily available in these programs. Maybe give it something like that. So now also I want to apply some shadowing in here. Once again, under your filters and some basic parameters and all the programs out there for editing, you've got different types of shading and beveling and things like that. I'm going to do an insert and emboss, take a look and see what that looks like. I'm also going to change the color of my background by just clicking in the background. It shows me my canvas, and I'm going to give it a darker color to get an idea of what this is going to look like here. And looks pretty good, and you can tell that my transparency is blocking out my letters here. So I just have to think about that when I'm creating the final screen. I probably want to go with a lighter color of some sorts. So this is looking decent. I might want to add a little bit of shadowing also to the actual glass as well. Go to my bevel and emboss. I could try to do a inner bevel and see what that looks like. And that probably looks pretty good. It looks like it's actually appearing behind there. So I'm basically done with my DRO. Now I want to get rid of these numeric values because we're going to actually be importing them inside of Flash. So now that this is all done, I'm going to highlight it, and because I applied some effects that are not native to Flash or Fireworks, I need to come in to modify and flatten that into a bitmap. By flattening that, now it is a object that I can import with all of its effects intact. Now I'm going to create a button just by simply choosing the same type, and let's give it a pretty big button here because I can scale it down and change it once I get into Flash. I'm also going to add a outline to it of white, just to give it some more effects. I'm going to use the standard effects inside of Fireworks, and I'm going to do a outer bevel, which will give me more of a button effect. Now I don't like that red color. I'm probably going to go with a black. Will be kind of a gray. I can go in here and adjust a lot of things, but I'm not going to do that. I also am going to change this black area. Probably should be a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit too light, just so I can see some of my text. So there we go. Here's just a really quick button. Now those buttons I am set. I can make, if I want all my button styles the same, I can just copy them as many times as I want inside of Flash. The next quick tutorial will be on dragging and dropping these into Flash or importing them from your own editing software.